I don't know what's in store, but I know I will not die in that hospital. I visualize myself walking out of there or being taken to heaven. This is where fear meets faith, scarcity meets abundance. Nobody was lending money. And yet we were super grateful that the seller of our project had a contract on a commercial property. He needed our deal to close in order for his deal to close. I think about the 20-year-old Kim. Gosh, what it would have been differently if I would have taken the advice of my family and just exhaled and learned more about who I was and look at different options rather than just try to beat the rock with a sledgehammer to make it move. It would have been a very, very different experience.
Welcome to the Secrets to Abundant Living podcast. Your guide on this journey is Amy Sylvis. If you're ready for the secrets to an abundant life, hit that subscribe button now, and let's get started.
Secrets to Abundant Living podcast community. I'm so excited to welcome you to another episode. This is a special one. This is one 5+ years in the making of an amazing friend, a great business partner, a woman who I admire more than I have words. Her name is Kim Wendland. And gosh, I'm excited for you all to meet her, hear her story, and dive into how special she is. Kim, welcome to the podcast.
Oh my gosh, Amy, it's so exciting to be here with you. I love you. You know, your listeners, their socks are blessed off all the time. They know how amazing you are. And I also know how amazing you are because we get to work together pretty much every day. And what a blessing. So if you guys wonder, what is it like to work with Amy Sylvis? The answer is amazing.
Oh, you're so sweet. And I was just thinking this morning, Kim, and we'll get into how we know each other in our business relationship. But even if, something happened and we are no longer working together, you would still be someone I would be talking to as much as I possibly could and want to be a big part of my life. That's how special you are. So,
Hey, same.
tell the listeners who you are, Kim. Can you give us a little bit more about yourself if you don't mind?
Oh gosh, everybody! I wish I could see you and meet you and give you a big virtual hug. If you're huggers, that's great. If you're not, I would just virtual hug you. But who is Kim Wendland? I'm just a person who loves life and enjoys work. I love work and the way it grows me and the way that through work I'm able to contribute to my community, to the economy, to all the things, right? Including our own personal life. Having spent 30 years in technology working for everybody else's stock price, I dabbled with entrepreneurship where I established a couple of businesses and worked hard with those. Hashtag GOD. I was able to sell them before the 2008 financial crisis. Nobody lost a paycheck. I'd helped everyone find a new job. And then went back into technology, which I was pretty much done with. So I was done with it from a personal level. Technology was once fun and engaging, and we were like creating new things. And then as it matured, it became mostly about securing data. Then it wasn't so revolutionary and fun to me. So I was kind of done with the treadmill, but I wanted to give back. And so I looked around and I learned about the Department of Family and Protective Services in the state of Texas. And I was like, oh my gosh, who doesn't want to do anything to help kids get out of bad situations? And so I applied my technology background, leadership background there, and spent 5 years at the state of Texas, just giving back in a different kind of societal way. But my heart has always been toward people, Amy. Like it was never about the technology for me. It was always about how can the technology serve people. And, people are in our political discourse, the people get kind of bantered around and thrown around a lot. But for me, it's like each and every one of your listeners is on a journey and they're living a life and they're trying to accomplish their big dreams. And when I think of serving the people, I think of serving the individual. How can I contribute in some small way to someone else's success? And so that's what I've always been about, whichever context it was in, including now with our real estate business. So that was a lot of rambling, but I hope you get a sense of what I care about and why maybe we're kindred spirits, right?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And you have had an illustrious, clear career as an executive, like you said, giving back. And now you and I own around, I would say, $80 million in multifamily real estate together, which is amazing over the past 5 years. And you've been instrumental as well in bringing a bunch of people on board to this kind of real estate multifamily space. And yeah, even I've just been able to see how much you do care about people, exactly as you said, because people think of real estate and they think, okay, make money, maybe they for slumlords, but the way you've been able to, I know it's important, but the way you've been able to serve the different stakeholders in real estate, and we'll get into this, it's been amazing. Always keeping people in mind. So I'm excited to be able to talk through that and highlight that here.
Oh, for sure. Let's do it.
Great. So we talk on this podcast a little bit about abundance, just a little bit. And, I think this is a really good segue of how you've been able to find abundance in your life, in your career. How do you define abundance in your life?
Oh, gosh. In my life, I'm just going to be really transparent. Like we're talking today, I'm 57. So I've been around the block a few times. And for me, the word abundance is synonymous with the word faith. I truly tried really hard to understand abundance outside of the concept of faith. And I just couldn't get there because there's seasons. Like even winter is not nearly as abundant as spring, is not nearly as abundant as fall, right? So, even in nature, you ebb and flow between times of plenty and times of scarcity. But it's faith, in my opinion, it's faith and the way it works in my mind and my heart. It's faith that lets me know in the winter, spring is coming. And it's the faith is the way that, evidence of things unseen. You have to believe something before it can be seen many times. That's what creators and innovators think about. But it's also the case that if I'm in a scarcity place, a place of scarce resources in the moment, an abundant mindset isn't a joke that says, oh, this morsel is plenty. That's not the case, right? Instead, an abundant mindset is, I'm grateful for this morsel because I know that how it's nourishing whatever now is going to grow into something truly plentiful. And it's that distinction that I feel like sometimes is lost in the conversation because it can be scarce, and you can, in scarcity, know that that's just a point in time, not the end, right? I hope that makes sense. I keep trying to think of a good analogy, but it always comes back to agriculture and nature,
I like that. Well, I think that's something a lot of people can relate to, right? So that makes a lot of sense. And that faith aspect, I've talked to a lot of people that hasn't come up on this podcast. I'm so grateful that you brought it up because that really is, what else do we have to grab onto if things feel scarce? You and I are openly Christian. We talk about our faith in God, and it really is such a transformational, I don't want to say thing to have, but faith is, really is powerful in that way. You've been through a few things, Kim. I don't know what you're comfortable sharing, but can you well, yeah, I have too. Everyone's heard about my stuff. Can you share a time, and I'm not trying to lead you in a specific direction though, when things felt scarce, when you had to grow that appreciation, that faith in that morsel and know, exactly what you said, what will come of it?
I'm going to go somewhere you might not expect. And I don't know that you would know these stories. When I was young, I was blessed with an understanding of God. My earliest memories are talking to God, not talking to my parents, like although I have wonderful memories of both. But it seems to be not the norm that you're aware of prayer as a small person. So for me, this concept of faith and life is so interwoven. Well, fast forward, I've graduated high school and I'm in my first year and a half of college. And gosh, life kind of was that. I didn't realize that all of the thriving and striving and achieving that I did in high school had actually burned me out. I can look back now and say, gosh, you were toasted. but I didn't know that. I was just in a football coach's daughter. It's like you just stand up the next day, win, 555, right? Well, my family were begging me to take the summer off, but I couldn't imagine doing that because I had a car payment. Okay. So this is a 20-year-old brain, right?
Yeah.
So rather than do that, I'm like, I've got to get into school. I've got to work hard. I have to do better. I have to all go, do, right? And it wasn't working. Imagine that. A burnt out person trying to thrive wasn't working. How could that be? And rather than being grateful for the family I had who was supportive, rather than being grateful that I only had a car payment and not children and all the things that go with a full family. Like, rather than having that perspective, I had the, oh my gosh, I have to fulfill my obligations. I had a scarcity mindset. And in that period of time and that confusion, I even married a guy that I knew I didn't really love, but thought we would make a good pair in life and thought it would be okay. And it was quite honestly a disaster. I did not finish my degree, moved to San Antonio from San Angelo with him. He was in the military there. He was a training instructor. Hats off to all the folks in the military, like incredible things people do. But the one individual soldier I was married to was, I'm going to say he was a SOB because I could not measure up to 50 other airmen that thought he was God because he was the guy with the Smokey Bear hat, right? And I was so lost. I hadn't really figured out how to give in a way that would encourage and stroke his ego in the way that would be healthy for him. So, like, I was not a great wife. He was not a great husband. And together we were a disaster. And as the 57-year-old Kim, looking back at the 22-year-old Kim, I can see that the root of all of it was I thought I had to do it all. I thought I had to make life happen. And so I was like hammering. And the more I hammered, the deeper the hole got. Imagine that. Imagine that. Duh, right? So the 57-year-old person sees that. The 22-year-old is like, why can't I break this rock? I'm hammering in this rock. It will not move, right? God is good and he's gracious. And after 3.5 years, and at that time, my faith was a very legalistic faith. I hadn't come to understand grace yet. And I grew up in a rule book kind of church, and in that rule book kind of church, get divorced, go to hell, right? So compounding the badness situation I was in, you amplify that with theology that is off, and you just add more pressure. So I truly, in that moment, thought, wow, I'm going to have to choose between my physical life and my spiritual eternity, because I knew that if I stayed in the marriage, the abuse would not end, and that things were getting really dangerous. My family knew that. My family wanted me out. I was not of the mindset to leave. But there was a day when that mindset shifted, and I openly said to God, Lord, if I'm going to go to hell and I can't live up to your standards on my own anyway, I think I'm going to delay it a little while, and I'm going to get a divorce, and please forgive me. And that was where I landed with it. So that instinct to survive overrode fear, right? So that dark season is the greatest time in my life where wrong thinking led to so many things, and wrong understanding and wrong beliefs, because, and I say wrong of myself, not judging anyone else or their choices, but it was totally wrong for me. When I look at things now and I go through challenges now, and we can talk about some of those, it's a very different approach. I think about the 20-year-old Kim. Gosh, what it would have been differently if I would have taken the advice of my family and just exhaled and not pressed. If I had exhaled and learned more about who I was and look at different options rather than just try to beat the rock with a sledgehammer to make it move, it would have been a very, very different experience. But the abundance of all this is that even in my fear-based decisions, even in my scarce-based decisions, it ultimately turned out for the good. And that I did finish my degree, and I went through this long healing process. I did meet my husband of now 29 years as a result of going back to college. I am thriving and living as a human in a healthy way, not a codependent or not a dangerous way, just a loving, genuine life, and living life every day, working with 5 great partners out of the Quattro team, you and so many others that we get to work with every day. And all of that is completely different because every single day I'm living out of a place of gratitude and not a place of striving. So there couldn't be a greater contrast between the 20-year-old confusion and what it looks like to walk in faith. It's just totally different.
Incredible. I just, as well as I know you over the past 5 years, Kim, and I know how much you live exactly what you're saying, how you live in faith, how you live in abundance. To imagine you, and I know your tenacity and determination, you're one of the most, you've got grit, girl. So I can imagine you working through that. No, but as you said, the best you knew how, right? You didn't have all the life experience you have now. You just kind of knew what was right in front of you. And I know how competent and intelligent you are. I'm just going to keep throwing these compliments at you. But I do know, and I can just imagine you, yeah, like you said, sledgehammering that rock, and maybe not seeing the bigger picture, but your ability to now take those lessons and apply those to so many things today. Our business isn't easy. Life isn't easy. There are things that can go wrong, but to continue forward with those lessons, even 30, almost 40 years later, pretty powerful.
It is. And so applying that to our real estate business, right? So we all get started in multifamily real estate, late 2018, 2019. We make our first acquisition in 2020, January of 2020. So excited. And on the news, when I went to go close, we were flying into the closing. I heard this thing called COVID. Had no idea. It was just a blip on the news. And I thought, gosh, I hope I don't catch that, and moved on, right? And to know that at that moment, even though we had just signed a contract, as we were closing one deal, we signed a contract on a portfolio of 3. We had no way of knowing what was about to occur. And then when on March 16th, both the bond market and the stock market fell historically, and in that collapse, our lender, who we were 5 days away from closing, 5 days, at that point, people are just doing the final rev of the documents, everything's approved. The lender couldn't make their margin call, and they were not able to close the loan. So this is where fear meets faith. Scarcity meets abundance. Nobody was lending money. No one. And yet we were super grateful that the seller of our project himself had a contract on a commercial property. He needed our deal to close in order for his deal to close. As a result, he was patient. Of course, he was begrudgingly and insisting and doing all the things that you do to motivate somebody to close a deal. And we were doing all that we could. But I was grateful that we had somebody who could stay through this with us. And not one time did he step away from the table. Now, what did it look like on the other side? Nobody's lending. Like the lights are off on every bank in the nation, right? We're all locked down. They're trying to figure out how to do banking remotely. The whole world is upside down. So here's what it looked like for us. We put together a lender package. We would send that out to 5 people, each of us, 5 people who we knew that were lenders who were still in business. They would take a look at it. They would express interest. We would evaluate overnight. And by morning, they weren't lending anymore. They had shut the door. So we were chasing, it was like we were chasing the proverbial snowball going down the mountain, right? So we all get to the end of that road and we're all like, yeah, it's just something in our soul that wouldn't quit, just would not quit. And, it's like 3 a.m. We're running out of contacts. And like a few times I even contacted people who worked at the same firm. I didn't realize, right? So all of us are like, I don't know who else to call, but we couldn't let it go. There's something drawing us forward, something that said it's not done yet.
Yeah.
And so we all agreed that the next morning we would make 5 more calls and just see what happened. And then we would have to call up. So I make my 5, no luck. Erin makes her 5. Chad is made his 4th. And on his 5th call, we learned about an entirely different type of lending called community development financial institution. And all of a sudden, life was breathed into the deal. And in another 3 months, we ultimately, by July, we closed that portfolio. And it's very easy. People are like, how did you find the last person? It's like, because they were the only financial institution that had a light on. Everybody, it's really easy to see when there's only one.
Right there. Wow.
So abundance and belief in what was possible kept us going forward in a very scarce time, right? So that's the power of faith. I think that's the power of an abundance mindset. It's just an example that happened recently for that. And seriously, in asset management, we're managing a portfolio of $200 million in assets, and every single day there's opportunity for scarcity mindset or abundant mindset. And when you stay believing and you're, what does that look like? I just have to pause, Amy says. So earlier I mentioned like an abundant mindset could look like, oh, that was bad news, but no problem. I'm going to go on the couch, smoke some weed, and check the reports tomorrow, right? Like that is called disrespect. And it is absolutely not taking care of business. On the other side, you have the extreme where somebody is going to press to the irrational. And that too is disrespectful of the people that you're working with. I find that the threading of the needle works when I recognize what I can control and I respect what I cannot control. And I trust God to work all things together on our behalf. And so you're doing all you can while trusting all the way that it's all going to work out. And ultimately it does, because time is different.
Powerful. I know I say that word quite a bit, Kim, but I love that visual of really understanding what is within our control. And we can we can chase that down. We can put our effort towards that. But also this word respect of what is outside of our control. And instead of hitting our head against the wall and getting a giant bump or something that is truly not in our control and deluding ourselves into thinking something's in our control. And then coupling that with faith, very, very powerful. Our mutual friend, Coach Trevor McGregor, gave me an analogy once. I'm sure you've heard it too, that really sat with me is when you go into a restaurant and you place the order, you've done the work, you've decided, you showed up at the restaurant, you placed your order, but we're not all running back into the kitchen, trying to supervise the chef to see how the chef's going to make our order. We trust that we place it, we made that effort, and then it'll arrive. It doesn't always show up exactly in the time that we ask or the way that we want it, but it's still a powerful visual, at least for someone like me, of really doing what we can and then letting the rest of it, go and take care of itself.
Yeah. And, this people of faith will recognize this phrase surrender, right? And those uncontrollables are what I lay down. I don't carry them anymore. I just can't. Like, all I'm doing is using up emotional energy in a way that is not helpful to the people I'm working with or to the situation, and definitely reducing my capabilities of making good decisions because I'm focused on the wrong thing. The most responsible thing, response-able thing that I can do is to let that go and look for alternatives and ways around it. And how can I hedge that? How can I reduce the risk? Rather than, how can I make this change? Like, recently, we've been through 18 months of incredible interest rate increases. Like, if, people in the business 50 years have not seen what happened recently. So sure, I could have been wringing my hands about the interest rate when we needed to be refinancing assets the whole time. But as the asset manager, I can't control the interest rate. I can completely influence and have some control over what is our occupancy, how, all the KPIs that we all watch. What are the things I can do to make this the most lendable asset possible? And here's the cool part, Amy. We've refinanced 6 assets in the last 8 months. And I'm not even making this up. Every single time we were at the point where we rate locked, there was a dip. There was a dip in the actual interest rate. Every single time. And if you're a big faith person, you would say, look what God did. If you're a skeptical person, you would say correlation. And I'm like, yes, God correlated all that beautifully. Because we were even upset that as interest rate continued to rise, that we hadn't closed yet. However, when we actually closed, it was lower than when we thought we needed to be closing. So this whole concept of stay focused on the things that you can do something about and trust and believe that abundant and good things are coming. That is a really healthy way to live and a really smart way to do business.
You're a shining example, Kim. I mean, going back to that March of 2020 deal, I had a front row seat. You decided to take brand new people under your wing like myself and just, give me the grace of coming on board and teaching me this business. And although I initially wasn't part of that deal, I had a front row seat to seeing exactly how you all handled it. And then I had a front row seat as an investor in that deal because I was so impressed with you all with how you treated some residents that were in trouble. I think you and I both remember, there was one woman who was sick and she had some awful circumstance with her caregiver, draining her bank account. And, I don't know if you're comfortable telling that story, but I mean, it's just the walk of faith and abundance of how you can treat people, the privilege that we have, how we can treat people in times of need in this industry is one of the most life-giving aspects of why I love being in this industry.
Well, and I love that you love that in that we're like-minded that way. Yeah. So what Amy's alluding to is this really tragic situation in Knoxville, Tennessee, where an elderly person was not well, had caregivers, and the caregivers stole her money. She wasn't able to make rent, had never been late, was a long-term resident even before we owned the property. You could see that she was the right kind of people, if you will, in that she was responsible, she was respectful, and she was a good neighbor. And so I want people who would be investing in our projects to understand how this went down. We did cover her rent, but we didn't cover it with property funds. We personally, and you contributed as well, we personally gave her the gift of cash and cleared her balance and gave her some grace to catch up. And what we learned later is the huge impact that had, not just on her, but on her whole family. It was an encouragement in a dark time. Like, that's happening in 2021, right? And so people were really struggling back then even more. And it was a beautiful moment. But this is why I say an abundant mindset is a faith mindset, because people of faith know that God is keenly interested in us being keenly interested in our fellow humans. And that by bringing value to them and bringing service to them, that we're living out what we're commanded to do, which is to love each other, right? If we operate with our property manager with a measure of respect and regard instead of accusation and frustration, the relationship that fosters creates this environment where the property manager is helping you look out for the residents. They're helping you identify the bad neighbors and knowing that they're just not a good fit there and they need to move on. It's a no slumlord policy meets people first policy that allows some amazing things to happen in our communities. And that was just one example. But today, we had our operations meeting this morning, and I got to tell y'all this. My friend little Amy here, she's so cool. So the manager of the property is freezing cold. She's bundled up in her coat. She has a scarf on. She's shivering. You could hear in her voice that she was legit cold. And it was 20 degrees in Atlanta today. So, that's not the norm for Atlanta. So she was super cold. And it was taking a while for the heater to kick in and catch up. So what does Miss Amy do? Like, during the call, Amy is literally Googling, and what you had like 1 hour delivery or so, and a brand new like little space heater shows up. And then we learn the maintenance team doesn't have one either. So she orders a second one. And this is what we mean about people first. Like, it was a huge gesture to just let them know Amy heard her, cares enough about her to do something about it. I loved it. It was a beautiful moment.
Thanks, Kim. I appreciate that. It's you lead by example and you inspire. I think it is there are things in the world, Kim, that as much as we try, we can't address. So I think you and I both jump for joy when there are things that we can impact, and we'll always take. Yeah. If it's a space heater, great. I mean, how cool is the internet and things like Instacart to just. In fact, I was just checking, our second heater will be there in about 10 minutes. So we're as we record. So Kim, I'm going to go here because you had a challenge in 2020. That's an understatement. And as I was thinking about recording this podcast, I remember sitting in this exact chair on my knees, praying to God for your help and thinking and saying out loud, we're going to use her story for good, God. This is all going to turn out well. And we're going to platform her whatever way we can, spread her words, spread her story. And it's just so special here almost 4 years later that I'm able to record this podcast with you. Are you comfortable sharing a little bit about that journey and maybe abundance that came from that, or the faith, however you'd like
Oh,
to frame it.
for sure.
Our
Oh my
listeners
God.
would really benefit from that.
Well, it is a hashtag God story. And Amy, you walked along with me, and thank you for being such a prayer warrior and such an encourager. So what Amy's alluding to is Thanksgiving of 2020, our family gathered, even though we had all tested ourselves to make sure that we were not sick. When we gathered, sure enough, within 3 days, all five of us, and there was only five, all five of us had COVID. And, my mom was in her 70s. I was keenly concerned about mom. And, we all just had our symptom of the day text messages going around as we were all miserable, trying to figure out what to do. And, thankfully I had a fantastic doctor there in Austin and, was in touch, but everybody else started getting better and I wasn't. And on day 18 of COVID, I wasn't able to keep my oxygen up. Like it was below 85. And even if I got up and walked around and move, I couldn't get it up there. So the doc is like, yeah, okay, it's time to go into the ER and just get some oxygen, it'll be okay. In my soul, though, I knew something was up. And I didn't just jump in the car and go, much to my husband's exasperation. I needed to take a little bit of time. I needed to sit in the moment, recognizing that for the first time, because I was always obviously more of a positive person, I never imagined being in that moment. I needed to take that in. I needed to understand what I might be going into, not because I wanted to invite fear, but because I wanted to walk in faith and I needed to get grounded. And so I was, spending some time in prayer, getting ready, slowly packing a bag. Honestly, fitting up for a spiritual battle. And so my husband was concerned. I haven't told this in a while. I'm sorry for the tears today.
No.
Not trying to be melodramatic, team. It's
Goodness,
just
no. This is a very heavy topic.
So take husband drives me to the ER. Obviously, he can't go in. So we're sitting in the car, and like my husband is, I love him so much, and I think the reason I'm in my life is that he does live in scarcity and fear, and my job is to help him not. And so, so he was very concerned. We had buried more people than we had ever buried in any one year in our family in 2020. We lost so many friends and family. So, and you didn't get to really go to the funeral, right? So like we were keenly aware of what was possible. And so I just leaned over and hugged him really big and I said, hey, I don't know what's in store, but I know that I will not die in that hospital. And in my mind, I visualized myself walking out of there or being taken to heaven. But I knew that I would not spend my end there. And I told him that I fully expected to leave that hospital. And I did, one way or the other. I was leaving.
Yes.
So go into the hospital, you get checked in. It's a whole weird time. I was just hoping they had a bed and I wouldn't be sleeping in a chair. And thankfully they did have a bed. But they kept asking me to stay awake and I just couldn't. They kept saying, you gotta stay awake. Your oxygen's falling. And I would do my best, but I couldn't. What was happening, we now know, is that even though I was breathing, my body couldn't convert the oxygen. And so even though I was breathing on oxygen, the oxygen level kept falling. That's part of what COVID did. And so ultimately go into the ICU. I remember being taken to the ICU and somebody telling me I was going there, but I don't even remember getting there. Like I was out. So my family goes through, and you guys, Amy, you all were just right there with them virtually and in prayer. Every single day it was a further step down. So immediately I'm on a ventilator. The ventilator, the way those things work is, they're keeping the air moving, but it doesn't mean your lungs can convert the air into oxygen. We go through 3 days of constantly reducing, lower and lower and lower. So my husband receives a call like 7:30 in the morning on the third day I was there, and it was December 10th of 2020. And the call said, yeah, Kim's oxygen is 48 and she's breathing 144 breaths a minute, which is like what happens if you're sprinting. It just, COVID was winning. So what happened next is so incredible, but I need to pause and tell you, we're going to rewind a little bit. So that's like the practical things that are happening. I'm in and out. They would periodically come in, even though you're on the vent. And when you're on a ventilator, they give you propofol. And propofol, like, you're pretty close to dead as you can still be alive and be when you're on that stuff. And they would wake me up periodically. And in one of those, like, I can't communicate. I'm really distorted reality. But I was aware, very aware, that things were not going well. And you know how, I don't know if you do this or not, but when I'm frustrated, I'll just kind of throw my head back.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I just threw my head back and closed my eyes. Now, I'm pretty sure my head was already back and my eyes were already closed. But like, that was like what my muscle memory was wanting to do.
Yeah.
And I just said to God, I said, I love you. I need your help. I'm going to go to sleep now, and I trust you. And I totally surrendered. And I wasn't fighting, and I was in a place of peace in my soul. So this is all happening around the same time, right? So let's go back to it's 7:30 in the morning. Wes gets the call, and they tell him, you need to come try to get a negative COVID test so that you can come say goodbye. Like, that's where Wes was. And of course, he couldn't get a negative one because we all had COVID.
Right.
So he's not able to say goodbye. He's contacted my family, my immediate family, who everybody's upset. But being people who don't give up and being people who believe in God, they sent the word out through our Quattro business. And Amy, you and everybody else, you all gathered up people to pray. And I later learned that there were people from 4 of the world's 5 major religions across 11 countries that we know of, all praying. And what was so humbling about it was, having been a prayer warrior for decades, it was like all of those prayers I had lifted up for others came back all in one moment. And here you are in a global pandemic where millions of people are dying all around the world. And people all around the world are praying for one human in one hospital bed in one ICU. And to be the recipient of that kind of love is amazing. So at 9 a.m., the oxygen is 48 and heart rate is going crazy. The way people die is their heart rate goes fast enough, diaphragm can't keep up. It goes into a spasm and then it's over. Well, instead, you all start praying, and by 9 p.m. that night, the oxygen was 98, even though it was on the ventilator, and a miracle, Kim 2.0, had occurred. And that miracle was so evident because the doctors were shocked. Like, that had not happened in that hospital in Austin. Like, here's what they explained to me, that those who survived had a tracheotomy, or they had major organ damage, or they had so much brain damage that it would have been better for them to pass. And here I was, I did not have brain damage, I did not have any organ damage, and I did not have a tracheotomy. And yet I had just survived. Now I remember waking up, because periodically they do wake you up out of the stuff. And I was waking up and I couldn't really tell what was going on, but all of a sudden there was this huge cheer. Like all the staff that were in there working, and there were a lot of feet. So like I can see feet, like a lot of people. And there was this huge cheer, and they yelled, "She's going to make it. She's going to make it." And that was when I knew I was out of the woods, Now that was the beginning of a long recovery. So, hey, you've survived, check mark, yay, hashtag God miracle. Oh my gosh, I can't move my left arm. I can't walk. I can't move. Standing at the side of the bed, trembling for 20 seconds was the best I could do. Like, it was just phenomenal what had happened to the body. But I found that when I looked at the eyes of the people who were working in the hospital, they were exhausted, and their eyes were they were dark. They were not happy people. They were struggling to serve people like me. So it became my mission then that whoever left my room would be laughing at something stupid that I had just done, and that we would be celebrating what minuscule progress I had made. Whether that was, gosh, I got to pee on a spoon, or gosh, I didn't buck myself out of the bed with the remote control, or whatever it was that we could laugh at and celebrate. And I always blamed them for doing such a good thing. And that feedback loop of joy and gratitude, that became like, I kind of fed off of that emotionally, mentally, spiritually. They were cheering for me. They were helping me. It was truly a beautiful time. It was tough, but it was a beautiful time. So I know we need to land the story, but just to summarize the end of that 3.5-year journey that began on December 10th at 9 p.m. I was let out of the hospital on Christmas Day to go to physical rehab. So the symbolism of that was a Christian was huge. And then by Easter, my husband and I walked a 5K. It was the slowest 5K, but we did it. And it was all in celebration because we love the symbolism of the birth and then the rebirth, right? So yeah, it's been quite the ride. And Amy, you've been such a huge encourager through that time. You having so many lung things, like you totally understood what I was going through, even when I didn't. Our conversations were so helpful.
Oh my gosh. Well, just the abundance, Kim. I didn't know about how you were trying to be an encourager, even in your time of need, to the healthcare providers. That is so you. It gives me goosebumps, or as we say, God bumps. The fact that even in your time of need, when you came back from death's door, you were so eager to put a smile on other people's face. And gosh, if anyone heard you laugh, Kim, you've got one of the best laughs I've ever heard in my life. I'm not a funny person, but on occasion I get you to laugh, and it fills my body with joy. It's just, you've got such a great laugh.
It's good to laugh. Like, it's good. So, Amy, I just appreciate you so much. And thank you for sharing that story. I hope it's an encouragement for someone, and that they weren't tired of just yet another COVID conversation.
Oh, my goodness. No, Kim, this whole conversation is because I get feedback. I'm so grateful. I get feedback from so many people about our guests on this podcast, and the different perspectives and the encouragement and the inspiration. And if anyone exemplifies, it's you. I'm just so grateful that you took the time out of your busy day to to share several of these stories. I'm so grateful to call you a friend and a sister. And I know you and I are off to actually pray for our residents here in a couple minutes in another meeting. So I just really want to thank you for being you. You've been a great example to me, and I work really hard to emulate you. So I cherish you so much.
Well, I reciprocate that, and I'm like, that's hilarious to hear because I try to be like Amy. But here's the thing I hope your listeners understand is that you can't outgive God. So give openly, give freely. In the entire Bible, the entire book, there's only one time that God challenges us to do something. He even says in this area of giving, test me on this. He says it in Malachi, or if you're Jewish, Maliki, I think is how they say Malachi. But in the book of Malachi, God literally says, test me on this. And he wants us to give. And that's amazing because one of the 10 commandments is you will not test God. And so, for God to want so much for us to be givers and trust in, for him to say that is just mind blowing to me. So, go out there and give some stuff away, give some love away, encourage some people, make sure your residents are taken care of, and, bless the socks off somebody today.
I love it. Be like Kim. Thanks, Kim. I love you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Secrets to Abundant Living podcast. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights that will empower you on your journey towards abundance. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback means the world to us, and it helps others discover the secrets to an abundant life too. Stay connected with us on LinkedIn, Amy Sylvis. Keep striving for your goals, nurturing your relationships, and embracing the adventure that is life. Until next time, we wish you an abundantly fulfilling day.